Hello everyone, my name's Trash Panda, and welcome back to another HYTALE video. Today we're going to be jumping headlong into planning our city, so without further ado, let's hop into the video. So, when we left off at the end of last video, I had just started planning where the town was going to be, how the town was all going to work. I'll go ahead and throw up an image of the drawing that I made for my thoughts on how the city was going to be planned out real quick so you guys can see uh, kind of in reference to what I'm doing in the world. Um, but as you can kind of tell, I wanted to mention it last episode, but kind of reached the end of the video and I figured it would be a little bit more appropriate at this point is that the map in HYTALE, at least for this server, I don't know in single player, I haven't tested it, but on the server, it only updates when you join the world. So if I wanted to update my map to show that this entire section has had all the grass taken away and it's just dirt, I would need to leave the server and rejoin in order for it to show up on the map. Otherwise, it's just going to stay the exact same way it was when I first joined the video. So you might see my map update a few times throughout this video, because I would occasionally get off and come back on to actually see the difference on the map. But, so basically, I didn't really have an opportunity to actually break down what my plans were for this town in the last video, so we'll go ahead and do that now. So what I'm working on right now, digging away, is Main Street, essentially like the main road, and then that's feeding directly into this main square. And so right now I'm digging out where another road will come out of that square. But then I'm going to have a bunch of houses and shops and stalls that are all set up around the like main square. So that right now I'm just getting like the general idea of where it is, and here in just a second I'll probably go ahead and start planning out where the buildings will be as well. So the drawing that I made, for the most part, is accurate to what I ended up doing, at least roughly speaking. I used it as the basic guide for what I ended up actually making, but there were a few adjustments that I ended up making for the sake of aesthetics, as well as everything actually fitting into place. Because as I mentioned last episode, these buildings come rather far off of the foundations. So, you know, at first I wasn't really paying attention, and I had the foundations like 4 blocks apart. But that means the roofs would literally be touching. And in some sections, the walls would probably be like right up against each other. And so I ended up having to redo a lot of this a little bit later on to actually get the spacing correct. And you may also notice that I am working with shale slabs right now, or cobbled shale slabs, even though normally what I do is I put down shale for that first layer. And really the reason is when you break shale, it turns into shale cobble, and then you have to go back and return it into shale at a builder's workshop or workbench. And so, as you can see here, I completely undid everything I had just put down. And essentially, my thoughts on that were, there's a good chance I'm going to be doing this a lot, and I'd be wasting a lot of shale that I'd have to turn back into shale at a builder's workbench. And so instead, I'm just going to use the slabs while I'm figuring out what I want to do. And then once it's all said and done, then we can replace the slabs with normal shale. And this is probably the one that I couldn't decide on the most. It was where I was deciding how the buildings were going to work around the square a little bit. So I think I almost end up rebuilding the exact same thing that I had torn it down the first time, with maybe the slightest little difference. Still, it was kind of frustrating that I switched things around like that. But in the end, I'd rather do things twice over and get it right than do it once over and decide that that was good enough and it not turn out right. So there's one building in between the structure that we just finished laying out and the building we built in the last episode. And this is when I really realized just how far apart some of these would need to be, because specifically for the building we built last time, it comes out by like 6 blocks, like 5 or 6 blocks. It's insane. Granted, that's the side that I had come out by 3, and that's the only time, well, I think that's the second time I've ever done that. And so on this house that I'm working on planning out right now, I'm just not going to do that. I'll only have it come out by like 1 on that side. But still, it's one of those things where I need to really be aware of the fact that these buildings get wider the taller they are. So every time you see me open my map and stare at it for a little bit, what I'm doing is I'm looking at the map and where I am on the map in relations to the drawing that I had made. At some point in this recording, I think I do get off and get back on and you can sort of see the difference. But it was really disorienting trying to lay all this out in relation to that map when I couldn't even actually see the changes that I was making on that map in real time. So I think I've mentioned some of my problems with maps before, but I'll mention them again. These are things that I assume will be fixed in HYTALE, but they're things that I would like to see, and so I'll mention them nonetheless. I would love to have the maps update in real time. It makes planning things like this so much easier, rather than having to log off and log back on. And then I wish maps would save your explored location. Now, logistically, there might be something that's, you know, a little difficult for actually having it save all of that information, but it's really frustrating that once you walk a couple, you know, blocks away from where you've just been, you can no longer see that information on your map, and it makes traversing this incredibly interesting and vibrant world significantly more difficult, simply because you can't really see where you've been before. kind of hard to tell with it being as dark it is right now, but I think the building that I am laying out right now is going to be a guild hall of sorts, and that one I'm really going to try and push the building style further, because it's going to be a guild hall slash like maybe city hall. I'm going to have a turret coming out of it. For those of you that aren't familiar with the bare bones of medieval architecture terminology, a turret is essentially a tower. Um, but I really want to try and push these buildings to all actually be different and unique and interesting. I haven't actually finished any of these as of this recording right now. So you guys will often see me run back around mostly the larger builds. The two smaller ones, obviously, I've already done those before, to the point now where it's not that difficult for me to know what I need to do. But on the bigger builds, it's helpful for me to remember how they actually look, so I can plan my new buildings accordingly. Specifically, the way that like the corners line up and other things like that. I decided to get distracted, and essentially, I didn't really like having this courtyard be empty, and so I was trying to figure out how I wanted to build all this out. Now, what I'm using is marble. Marble is a fairly common stone around this area. All of the mountains and like what I built my bluffs out of, those are marble. And so specifically, I'm using marble cobble. Now, I actually really like both the top and side texture of the marble cobble. But ultimately, I didn't really like using the normal marble cobble texture for the entirety of the uh, courtyard. And so what I'm freaking out about right now is I really liked the texture of uh, the marble cobble slabs. So the marble cobble slabs take the exact same they have the same texture as the side of the marble cobble block, but they have it on the top and the side. And so I was trying to figure out how to get the directionality of the marble cobble slabs to go in the direction that I wanted to, and I finally figured it out. So what's interesting to note is that you can sort of alter the direction of the slabs, because depending on how you place them, the top texture ends up looking a little bit differently. But the marble cobble itself, you can't rotate, which is really ultimately why I didn't use it. I liked the radial pattern of the stones, but I wanted to actually have some control over how that radial pattern placed down. I didn't want all of them going in just one direction. And I wasn't able to change that. And so ultimately, that's why a majority of the courtyard is made out of marble cobble slabs rather than just the normal marble cobble block. So what you just saw before is what uh, marble marble bricks look like. So for whatever reason, the marble brick doesn't have the bricks on top. That's not the top texture. It looks rather flat with like some cracks in it. It's really weird. Um, so I end up once again using the slab variant because it has the stairs on or the bricks on top. Um, and once again, the directionality of how you place down the slabs actually gives you a direction to the bricks, and so I was able to get this sort of like circular ring where the direction of the both the cobble and the bricks actually follows that, and you just can't get that with whole blocks. So I'd like to see some way to actually rotate the whole blocks themselves so that we can achieve that effect without having to rely solely on slabs. So I made the decision that the sides of the road would have the marble bricks and then run the cobble in the same direction going up it. I wanted to, give some sort of give the impression of a curb, and I feel like for the most part I was successful with the slabs. So at this point I was thinking, well, I'll just do the center uh, of the square in the normal cobble, marble cobble. But again, I don't know. I didn't really love the texture being the entire um, center of the courtyard either. And so my thought was, well, I'll just make it a line just like all the other lines. So there was this nice convenient like swirled marble brick that capped off the corner of the marble bricks just fine, but there wasn't really an equivalent for the cobble slabs that I was using. So instead, I just consistently had the corners work the exact same every single time, with one side always being the one um, that went all the way flush. And in the end, you hardly even notice it, and it keeps that sort of spiraled look throughout the entire thing. And so now what I'm doing is I figured I'd just go ahead and try my hand at placing down and making a fountain. So I guess I should give some context into why I decided to create the roads out of marble when everything else for this city, like the foundations of the houses being shale, like why I chose to go ahead and make the road and this square out of marble. So the the main reasoning for why I've actually done it that way is, like I said before, the bluffs all around are made of marble. I like the look of the shale more when it comes to actually building. But I just I wanted to tie in some of that natural marble into the city, and I also wanted it to feel more bright and alive, and the white streets running through a fairly dark build palette just kind of like brought it all together. It sort of made it feel more alive and less gloomy. I'm not going for a super gloomy vibe. I guess you could say I'm going for like a medieval fantasy where like the streets are clean and not filled with horse manure and stuff like that. So the white really pulled the surroundings into the town. It pulled those bluffs into the town and sort of made the town feel seamless with the environment. And it also made the town seem more alive and more clean. So as you can probably notice, I couldn't really decide what I wanted to do for this fountain. I kept changing a bunch of things, and we're just about finished with how I ended up building it. I am pretty happy with it. It turned out all right. Um, Fountains are just like fireplaces, not really my strong suit. Um, and water physics, as you can see right here, water physics are a little busted in Hytale right now. It's definitely something that, if I remember right, is on their to-do list, but it's not like the highest priority. But it made building, like actually putting the water into this fountain, really funny. So I decided to go ahead and like add a little bit more depth to the bottom of the fountain, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. But again, the water didn't want to actually like flow into the base, and so I was trying to figure out some way to get the water to actually just place normally, like fill up the basin of the fountain, and I couldn't, for the life of me, I couldn't figure out why it wouldn't place down correctly. No matter how many blocks I broke, no matter how I placed things down, it just didn't really want to fill in those spots. So then I kind of broke down. I should have just brought more buckets. That section of the river was so cleared out of water from when I had attempted to, or when I did make my own river. I should have just grabbed like 5 buckets, and I wouldn't have had to keep running back and forth. You can see me starting to lose my mind a little bit over that fountain, because it really was awful trying to get this fountain built. But finally give up. I go grab water and I fill everything in, and then as you guys will see in just a second, I actually decide to do something different with the fountain that would have been fantastic to know from the beginning. So I decided to try something different with the water, and this is when I decided to grab more buckets. I think, yeah. So you can't place water onto the pillar or the stool that I'm using there. So instead, I had to place down another block first, and I was trying to get um, the water to fill up the whole basin with just one bucket. I wasn't able to do that. In the end, I just had to use my buckets to fill in the corners like I was before, but now it was all coming out of one bucket, and I don't know, I liked the look of it coming out of the middle just a little bit more. The water level was slightly lower coming out of the 4 spout areas. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much the fountain. Um, it might get reworked in the future, but overall I was pretty happy with it. And once the entire courtyard was done, like I said before, guys, you can see nothing has changed on my map. It looks the exact same as when I first started. But now that the courtyard was finished, I was able to go ahead and start working on planning out the rest of the city. So this corner right here is probably the oddest section where I needed to play around with it the most, because the buildings didn't really want to line up right. Like I said, they need to be a certain distance away from each other, and essentially I was planning on having them be too close to one another. And so I ended up essentially converting those 2 buildings into one. Um, So this structure that I'm placing the slabs on sideways, that was our original home base. We took over a naturally occurring structure. And the reason why I hadn't gotten rid of it, even though it was very clearly in the way, is that the last time my friend who made the server had been on, that was still our home base. His bed was down there and he had logged off down there. And so I was waiting for him to get on before I actually tore it down so that I wouldn't trap him underground. But with that, that is where I stopped for that day. Alright guys, thank you for watching. If you did enjoy today's video, please consider hitting the like and subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next one.